I was halfway through my morning coffee when the mail arrived, and I swear the envelope from the power company had a personal vendetta against me. I ripped it open, expecting the usual $150 bill for keeping our suburban castle lit and cool. Instead, the number 600 stared back like a punch to the gut. $600? For a house that's so energy efficient it practically runs on good vibes? I double-checked the meter outside, squinting at the dials in the Seattle drizzle, but everything looked normal. No flickering lights, no rogue appliances. Just as I was about to call the utility company and demand answers, Karen Wilson's Tesla Model Y purred into her driveway next door. She stepped out, all designer yoga pants and smug smile like she'd just won the neighborhood beauty pageant. "Mike, your old house must be guzzling power," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern and something uglier I couldn't quite place. "You should sign up for our new HOA charging stations. Green energy's the future, you know." The way she said, "you're kind," lingered in the air, a jab I'd heard too many times as a black man in a mostly white suburb. I tried to ask what she meant, but she waved me off, tossing out a thread about my lawn looking unkempt and how the HOA could find me for it. My blood boiled, but I kept my cool. Something was off, way off, and I wasn't about to let her smugness stop me from figuring it out. Let me back up and give you the lay of the land, because this wasn't just about a bill. My name's Mike Reed, a 38-year-old electrical engineer who spent the last decade making sure power grids don't throw tantrums. My wife, Emma, is the heart of our home, a 36-year-old elementary school teacher who can calm a room of hyper kids or a stressed-out husband with a single look. Our daughter Sophie is 9, a whirlwind of curiosity who thinks my garage workshop is a science lab for her experiments. We're a black family in Pinewood Estates, a tidy Seattle suburb where the lawns are manicured, the mailboxes are regulation height, and the HOA rules are treated like holy scripture. We bought our house 10 years ago, right after Sophie was born, pouring every penny into a place we could call ours. It's not just a house, it's our proof that we could build a life despite the sideways glances and your so articulate comments we've navigated forever. The heart of it all is my workshop in the garage, a cluttered sanctuary of circuit boards and soldering irons where I tinker with energy monitors and teach Sophie how to wire LEDs. That workshop is my escape, my legacy for her, and the one place where I feel like I can solve any problem. Little did I know it had become ground zero for a war with a HOA president who thought she could bleed us dry and push us out. When we moved in, Pinewood seemed like the dream. Quiet streets, good schools, neighbors who waved even if they didn't always invite you to the block party. Emma and I worked hard to fit in, kept the grass trimmed, paid our dues, even showed up to the occasional community barbecue with her killer potato salad. But there was always this undercurrent, like we had to prove we belonged. The workshop kept me sane through it all. I'd spend evenings there, tweaking power-saving gadgets or helping Sophie build a solar-powered toy car. It's where I taught her that energy is power, in more ways than one. I never thought that workshop, or the meter humming outside it, would become a battleground. But then Karen Wilson moved in next door, all green energy speeches and Tesla swagger, and our peaceful routine started to fray. Looking back, I should have seen the signs when she got herself elected HOA president faster than you can say bylaws. But nothing could have prepared me for the moment I realized someone was stealing our electricity, and that Karen's shiny progressive mask hid a scheme to screw us all, with a side of racism to make it personal. About a month after Karen Wilson strutted into Pinewood Estates and somehow sweet-talked her way into becoming HOA president, I got my first taste of her brand of neighborhood tyranny. It was a Saturday morning, the kind where Sophie's giggling in the kitchen over pancakes and Emma's humming while grading papers. I was out front checking the solar panels on our roof, proud little workhorses that kept our bills low and our carbon footprint lower. They were my pet project, wired up in my workshop to maximize efficiency. I was wiping down a panel when Karen's Tesla rolled up, silent as a shark circling its prey. She stepped out, clutching a clipboard like it was a royal scepter, her smile all teeth and no warmth. "Mike," she said, her voice sugary enough to rot enamel, "I hate to bother you, but those solar panels, they're not quite up to our aesthetic standards." She handed me an official HOA notice, the kind printed on paper that screams, "We spent too much on letterhead." The violation claimed the panels were visibly obtrusive and needed repositioning to blend with the community's cohesive look. I blinked at her, then at the notice, wondering if she'd missed the half-dozen other houses with solar panels angled the exact same way. Here's the kicker. The notice cited a rule I'd never seen in the HOA handbook, some vague clause about maintaining architectural harmony. I'm an engineer. I read manuals for fun, so I knew that handbook backward and forward. This rule was as real as a unicorn. But Karen stood there, tilting her head like she was doing me a favor, and added, "Some families need to work a little harder to fit in, don't they?" The way she said, "some families," hit like a jab, her eyes flicking to our house where Sophie's bike leaned against the porch. It wasn't just about the panels, it was a dog whistle, loud and clear to a black family in a suburb where we were still proving our place. I kept my face neutral, years of practice kicking in, and said, "I'll look into it, Karen." She nodded, satisfied, and drove off, leaving me with a crumpled notice and a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't want trouble. Emma and I had dealt with enough concerned neighbors over the years to know escalation rarely ends well. So I spent the next weekend in my workshop recalibrating the panel's tilt to shave off a few degrees, just enough to dodge her radar. It cost me a day I'd planned to spend teaching Sophie how to measure voltage, but I figured compliance was the path of least resistance. What bugged me was the inconsistency. Nobody else got a notice, not the Thompsons with their gaudy roof tiles, or the guy across the street with panels twice as big. I mentioned it to Emma that night, and she frowned, stirring her tea. "She's testing you, Mike. People like her always start small." I shrugged it off, thinking it was just Karen flexing her new HOA crown. But then our electric bill started creeping up, a quiet warning that something was rotten in Pinewood. I didn't know it yet, but Karen's little power trip with the solar panels was just her opening move in a game I hadn't signed up to play. The next electric bill didn't just punch me in the gut, it drop-kicked me into next week. $700. For a house with solar panels, LED bulbs, and a thermostat, Emma guards like a hawk. I stood in our kitchen, staring at the numbers, while Sophie babbled about her latest science project over cereal. Emma glanced over, her teacher's eagle eye catching my frown. "Mike, what's wrong?" I slid the bill across the counter like it was radioactive. Her face fell, and we both knew what it meant. We'd been saving for Sophie's summer science camp, a $500 program where she'd get to build robots and launch model rockets, her 9-year-old version of paradise. That camp was non-negotiable. It was the spark that had her sketching circuit diagrams in her notebook. But $700? That was our camp fund, plus groceries, gone in one hit. Emma's voice was quiet but firm. "We'll figure it out." Except we didn't, not right away, and that night we had to tell Sophie the camp was off. Her little face crumpled and she nodded, trying to be brave, but I saw the disappointment in her eyes. It felt like I'd failed her, and that cut deeper than any bill. And I wasn't about to let this slide. I'm an electrical engineer. Problems are my bread and butter, so I rigged up a power monitor in my workshop, a sleek little device I'd built to track every watt our house consumed. It was like putting a stethoscope on our meter. The data came back screaming, massive spikes every night between 1 and 4 a.m., sucking down 80 kilowatt hours when we were all asleep. Our house wasn't the culprit. No way our fridge was throwing raves while we snoozed. Someone was stealing our electricity. I checked the meter outside, poking around the distribution box behind the garage in the Seattle drizzle. Buried under a tangle of wires, I found it, a hidden tap spliced into our line with surgical precision, feeding power somewhere else. It was pro-level work, not some amateur hack, and it was rigged to bypass detection unless you knew what to look for. My gut said Karen, but I had no proof, yet. I set up a discreet security camera, the kind you'd miss unless you were looking for it, and waited. Meanwhile, Karen turned up the heat. A new HOA notice landed in our mailbox, this time fining us $200 for unauthorized electrical equipment, my power monitor. The letter, signed by Karen with a flourish, claimed it posed a safety hazard. Safety hazard, my ass. It was certified, wired to code, and tucked away where nobody would trip over it. I showed the notice to Emma, who snorted. "She's got a sixth sense for sniffing out your moves, Mike." Then the whispers started. Neighbors who used to wave at us on dog walks suddenly crossed the street. At the grocery store, Mrs. Thompson, who'd always chatted about Sophie's school projects, mumbled an excuse and bolted. Emma heard it from a teacher friend. Karen was spreading rumors that I was unhinged, a paranoid guy who didn't fit in and was scaring folks with my cameras. The kicker? She'd leaned hard into our race, dropping hints about certain families causing trouble, the kind of coded garbage that sticks in a suburb like Pinewood. Sophie came home one day, quiet, saying a kid at school asked why her dad was always angry. That wasn't just a rumor, it was a knife to my daughter's confidence. Karen's attacks weren't random, they were surgical, designed to squeeze us financially and push us out socially. The bills were draining our savings, the fines were piling up, and the rumors were turning our community into a minefield. I felt the weight of it every night, staring at the ceiling while Emma slept, wondering if we'd made a mistake moving here. But giving up isn't in my wiring. In the Army, I learned you don't win battles by getting mad, you get smart. So I doubled down in my workshop, analyzing the monitor's data like it was a puzzle from God himself. The camera footage was my next move, and I was betting it'd show me exactly where that stolen power was going. Karen thought she could bully us into submission, banking on her HOA crown and those dog whistle jabs to keep us isolated. She didn't know I was already building a case, piece by meticulous piece, and her smug little game was about to light a fire under me she'd regret. With those electric bills bleeding us dry and Karen's rumors turning our neighbors into strangers, I knew I had to act fast, but smart. I'm an engineer, not a hothead. I solve problems with data and logic, not fistfights. So I figured I'd try the straight and narrow path first, give Karen a chance to back off before I turned her game into a science experiment. My first move was a formal complaint to the HOA board. I spent a Saturday in my workshop drafting a letter that was politer than Karen deserved, laying out the unexplained power spikes and the hidden tap I'd found on our meter. I included graphs from my monitor, neat color-coded proof of nighttime surges that screamed theft. I even threw in a nod to community harmony, hoping to appeal to whatever shred of decency the board might have. I dropped it in the HOA mailbox at the clubhouse, expecting at least a discussion. A week later, I got a response, but not the kind I'd hoped for. Karen's name was scrawled at the bottom of a one-paragraph rejection, claiming insufficient evidence and suggesting I inspect my own appliances for faults. The kicker? She'd CC'd the entire board, making sure everyone saw her slap down. Emma read it and shook her head. She's not even pretending to care, Mike. I wasn't done. Next, I called the power company, figuring they'd have tools to sniff out theft. I spent an hour on hold, listening to elevator music that could have driven a saint to sin, only to get a rep who sounded like he was reading from a script. He confirmed the meter was functioning correctly and suggested I hire an electrician to check for internal issues. I pushed back, explaining the tap and the spikes, but he just repeated the script like a broken robot. Strike two. By now, Sophie was picking up on the tension. She'd stopped asking about science camp and started hovering when Emma and I talked bills. That hurt worse than the fines piling up in our mailbox. My last shot at playing nice was the monthly HOA meeting, held in the community clubhouse under flickering fluorescent lights. I showed up early, armed with a folder of evidence, monitor data, photos of the tap, and a timeline of our bills. The room filled with neighbors, most avoiding my eyes, probably spooked by Karen's whispers about my instability. When the floor opened for comments, I stood, keeping my voice steady. I'm here about unauthorized power usage on my property, I started, holding up the graphs. Someone's tapping our meter, costing us hundreds a month. I'd like the board to investigate. Before I could finish, Karen cut in, her voice smooth as silk and twice as slippery. Mike, I'm sorry you're upset, but this sounds like a personal matter, and frankly, getting so worked up isn't helping your case. The way she said worked up landed like a dart, her eyes flicking to the room as if to say, see? He's unhinged. A few neighbors shifted uncomfortably, and I caught the subtext. A black man raising his voice, even calmly, was too emotional in her world. The board president, a nervous guy named Carl who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, mumbled about proper channels and moved on to a debate about mailbox paint colors. Karen shot me a smile, the kind you'd give a kid who just lost at checkers. I left that meeting with my folder untouched and my blood pressure through the roof. Emma was waiting up when I got home, her tea gone cold. Any luck? She asked, though her eyes already knew the answer. I shook my head. Karen's got the board wrapped around her finger and she's banking on us giving up. I thought about consulting a lawyer, but a quick call to a friend in legal confirmed what I feared. A lawsuit would cost thousands, more than we could spare with those bills eating our savings. Every door I tried slammed shut and Karen's smugness only grew. She'd stroll by our house, Tesla gleaming, tossing out comments about keeping the neighborhood presentable with that same coded jab in her tone. The rumors got worse. Sophie overheard a neighbor's kid say we were troublemakers who didn't belong. That was the moment I stopped playing nice. Karen thought she could bury us with fines, bills, and her little dog whistle campaign. She didn't know I'd spent years wiring power grids to outsmart bigger threats than her. In my workshop, with Sophie's drawings pinned to the wall, I started planning. If the official routes were blocked, I'd build my own path, one with voltage meters and a whole lot of karma. I was burning the midnight oil in my workshop, the glow of my laptop screen casting shadows on Sophie's circuit sketches pinned to the wall. The security camera footage had finally come through and I was piecing together the puzzle of those insane power spikes. The monitor data showed the same pattern, 80 kilowatt hours vanishing every night between 1 and 4 a.m., like clockwork. The camera caught Karen's Tesla creeping out of her driveway at odd hours, but nothing concrete tied her to the tap on our meter. I was starting to feel like a detective in a bad movie, chasing ghosts with a voltmeter. Then, a buddy from my IT days, Dan, who lived a few streets over, texted me about an old HOA server he'd helped set up years ago. They never changed the admin password, he said, half joking. Bet you could find something juicy. I wasn't holding my breath, but I logged in, expecting maybe a few boring bylaws. What I found turned my stomach and changed everything. Buried in a folder labeled Community Initiatives, I stumbled on a draft of Karen's precious charging station proposal. She'd been hyping these green energy stations for weeks, pushing every neighbor to sign on for a network of EV chargers across Pinewood. I'd skimmed the pitch before, sounded like typical HOA fluff, but this draft had details she hadn't shared. Tucked in the fine print, so small you'd need a microscope, was a clause. All electricity costs for the stations would be split equally among residents through HOA dues. Not just for EVs, but for any connected devices. That alone made my engineer's brain twitch. But then I found an email thread between Karen and a sketchy supplier out of state. She'd ordered a dozen high-capacity servers, crypto mining rigs, the kind that guzzle power like a frat house guzzles beer. The delivery was set for next month, right after the charging stations went live. She was planning to hook her new mining operation to the community grid, letting every neighbor foot the bill for her crypto empire. Our $700 bills were just her warm-up act. But that wasn't the worst of it. Digging deeper, I found an email she'd sent to a board member, someone she thought was her ally. It was a rant about maintaining Pinewood's prestige and how certain families were dragging it down. She named us, me, Emma, Sophie, calling us undesirable and saying we didn't belong in a community of this caliber. She wrote, "Once they're gone, we can attract the right kind of residents." It wasn't just about money. Karen's real game was to push us out, using her HOA power and those stolen watts to break us financially, all because we were black. The racism I'd suspected in her snide comments and coded jabs was laid bare, raw and ugly. I sat back, heart pounding, staring at the screen. This wasn't just a neighbor stealing electricity, it was a calculated plan to scam the entire neighborhood and a personal vendetta to erase us from Pinewood. To scam the entire neighborhood and a personal vendetta to erase us from Pinewood. The weight of it hit me like a freight train. Those bills weren't just numbers, they were Karen's weapon to destroy our dream. The home we'd built for Sophie, despite every obstacle. The rumors, the fines, the way Sophie's classmates had started shunning her, it all clicked. Karen wasn't just greedy, she was vicious, banking on her charm and privilege to bulldoze anyone who didn't fit her vision of prestige. Emma was asleep upstairs, and I wanted to wake her, to share the rage and betrayal burning in my chest, but I stayed put. I printed the emails, saved the files, and backed everything up twice. My workshop, my sanctuary, felt like a war room now. Karen had turned this fight personal, and she'd underestimated the wrong guy. I wasn't just fighting for my family anymore, I was fighting for every neighbor she planned to screw over, and I had the data to bury her. She thought she was untouchable, but I was about to flip the switch on her whole operation. The emails on my laptop screen were like a smoking gun, each word from Karen dripping with greed and venom. Sitting in my workshop, surrounded by Sophie's circuit sketches and the hum of my power monitor, I felt a fire I hadn't known since my army days. Karen wasn't just stealing electricity, she was rigging the whole neighborhood to bankroll her crypto scam while trying to run my family out of Pinewood because of our skin. I could have marched over and shoved those printouts in her smug face, but that's not how you win wars. You plan, you build, you strike when the enemy's too cocky to see it coming. I leaned back in my creaky chair, the Seattle rain tapping the garage roof, and started mapping out a plan to take her down. 2 prongs, 1 technical, 1 legal, and a whole lot of community muscle to back it up. Karen thought she was playing chess. I was about to turn her board into a circuit breaker. First, the tech side. I'd been tracking her power theft for weeks, and that hidden tap on our meter was still feeding her mining rigs every night. Time to make it bite back. I designed a Smart Surge Protector, SSP for short, a device I'd used on industrial grids to prevent overloads. This one would be custom. It'd monitor our meter, detect her unauthorized draw, and issue 3 clear warnings, flashing lights and a low beep, impossible to miss. If she ignored them, the SSP would send a controlled voltage spike, just enough to fry her delicate mining hardware without touching the grid's safety. I'd build it to National Electrical Code specs with a weatherproof case and a big, bold sign, protected by SSP, unauthorized use may damage equipment. No one could cry foul. I'd dot every I and cross every T. I had the parts in my workshop, leftovers from grid projects, and I could assemble it in a weekend. The best part? When her rigs went up in smoke, I'd have logs proving she ignored the warnings. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. The legal prong was trickier, but just as sharp. Karen's emails and that charging station contract were dynamite, proof she was planning fraud and targeting us with racist intent. I'd file a formal complaint with the city's Public Utilities Commission, attaching the emails, my power monitor data, and footage of her late-night Tesla prowls. The commission could investigate power theft and HOA mismanagement, and her racist rants might even trigger a civil rights review. But I needed more than bureaucrats. I needed Pinewood to see her for what she was. That's where Emma came in. She's got a teacher's knack for bringing people together, and her school parent network was a goldmine of fed-up neighbors. I'd ask her to host a low-key meeting at our place, show the evidence, and get folks like Mrs. Clark, the sharp-eyed widow down the street, and Dan, my IT buddy, to spread the word. We'd hit the next HOA meeting with a united front, demanding Karen's ouster and a vote to kill her charging scam. I sketched the plan on a notepad, each step as precise as a wiring diagram. The SSP would hit Karen where it hurt, her wallet, while the commission complaint would tie her up in red tape. The community push would turn her HOA throne into a hot seat. I'd present the evidence like a courtroom lawyer, graphs, emails, video clips, all packaged in a slideshow that'd make her green energy spiel look like the con it was. Emma walked in as I was scribbling, her eyes tired but fierce. "You've got that look, Mike," she said, half smiling. "The one you get when you're about to outsmart a problem." I showed her the plan, and she nodded, adding, "Let's make sure Sophie sees us fight this. She needs to know we don't back down." I grinned, a rare moment of lightness. Karen thought she could bully us out of Pinewood with her fines and whispers. She didn't know I'd spent years taming power grids, and her little empire was about to short circuit. My workshop was ready, my family was behind me, and the neighbors were about to get a wake-up call. Game on. I spent the next few days turning my workshop into a battle station, the air thick with the smell of solder and Seattle rain seeping through the garage door. The Smart Surge Protector was my first weapon, and I built it like it was going to the moon. Industrial-grade components, a weatherproof enclosure, and a digital brain programmed to sniff out Karen's power theft. It would flash yellow, beep 3 times, and if she kept sucking our electricity, it'd send a precise voltage spike to cook her mining rigs without so much as a flicker in our living room. I wired it to our meter behind the garage, right where her sneaky tap was hiding, and slapped on a sign bigger than a pizza box. Protected by SSP, unauthorized use may damage equipment. I even had a buddy, a city inspector, double-check it for code compliance. Legal? Check. Lethal to crypto rigs? Double check. I flipped the switch and the SSP's LEDs blinked green, ready to catch Karen with her hand in the cookie jar. She'd been cocky enough to ignore my complaints. Let's see her ignore a few $1,000 in fried hardware. While the SSP stood guard, I launched the second prong of my plan, rallying Pinewood to take Karen down. Emma was my secret weapon here. She's got a teacher's magic for turning a room of skeptics into a team, and her school parent network was buzzing with folks sick of HOA nonsense. We invited a handful of neighbors to our living room, Mrs. Clark, the widow with a tongue sharper than her knitting needles, Dan, my IT guy who'd cracked the HOA server, and a young couple, Maria and Jamal, who'd gotten their own mystery finds. Emma served coffee and her famous lemon bars, softening the mood before I laid out the evidence. I projected my laptop onto the TV, graphs of our power spikes, Karen's emails plotting her charging station scam, and that gut punch rant calling us undesirable for being black. Mrs. Clark gasped at the racist bit, muttering, "That girl's got more nerve than sense." Dan's jaw tightened, and Maria whispered to Jamal, "That's why they've been cold to us too." I explained how Karen's green energy stations were a front to power her crypto mining, sticking every neighbor with the bill. By the time Emma passed out a petition to demand a special HOA meeting, everyone was signing up, ready to spread the word. I wasn't done. I packaged my evidence, monitor logs, emails, camera stills of Karen's Tesla creeping around at 2 a.m., and sent it to the city's Public Utilities Commission. The complaint was a beast, 20 pages detailing power theft, HOA fraud, and Karen's racist vendetta, with enough data to make a lawyer weep. I CC'd a local news site, the Pinewood Post, whose editor had a grudge against overreaching HOAs. She bit, promising to send a reporter to the upcoming meeting. Emma worked her school connections, getting parents to text neighbors about the petition. Within days, we had 30 signatures, enough to force a vote. Maria and Jamal knocked on doors, sharing the racist email which lit a fire under folks who'd stayed quiet before. Dan set up a group chat to coordinate, and Mrs. Clark, bless her, started calling it the uprising like we were storming a castle. Then it happened. Late one night, my phone pinged with an SSP alert. I checked the live feed. Karen, in her designer pajamas, fiddling with her garage setup, probably thinking she was untouchable. The SSP's yellow light flashed, the beeps echoed, and she smirked before cranking her rigs to max. Big mistake. The SSP did its job, sending a surgical spike. I watched the monitor log a power cutoff and smelled victory, or maybe burnt silicon from next door. The next morning, Karen's garage was silent, her Tesla parked crooked like she'd stormed off in a huff. My logs confirmed her rigs were toast, and the SSP had recorded every ignored warning. Checkmate tech side. The community side was rolling too. Emma's meeting had sparked a quiet revolt, and Pinewood was buzzing with whispers about Karen's scam. I fine-tuned my slideshow for the HOA meeting, packing it with visuals to make Karen's scheme crystal clear. Every night, I'd catch Emma's eye across the kitchen, and she'd nod, her teacher's calm hiding a fighter's heart. Sophie overheard us planning and asked, "Dad, are we gonna win?" I ruffled her hair. Kiddo, we're not just winning, we're rewiring the whole game. Karen thought she could bankrupt us, shame us, and scare us out of town. She didn't know Pinewood was waking up, and I had a surge protector with her name on it. The HOA meeting was coming, and we were ready to pull the plug on her reign. The Pinewood Estates clubhouse was packed tighter than a Black Friday sale, every folding chair occupied and neighbors spilling into the aisles. The air buzzed with tension, like the moment before a storm breaks. Emma squeezed my hand as we took our seats near the front, her calm teacher's face hiding the fire I knew was burning inside. Sophie was at home with a sitter, but I could almost hear her cheering me on. My laptop was hooked to the projector, my slideshow ready to light Karen's world on fire. Mrs. Clark sat to my left, her knitting needles clicking like a countdown. Dan, Maria, and Jamal were scattered through the crowd, each with a stack of printed evidence to pass out. The Pinewood Post reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Lisa, lurked in the back, her notebook open. Karen strutted in last, her Tesla keys dangling like a scepter, her smile as fake as her green energy crusade. She thought she owned this room. I was about to rewire her reality. The meeting kicked off with the usual HOA drivel, mailbox regulations, lawn care fines, but the crowd was restless, eyes flicking to me. When Carl, the jittery board president, opened the floor for comments, I stood, my voice steady as a grid under load. "I'm here to talk about theft, fraud, and discrimination," I said, clicking to my first slide, a graph of our $700 power bills spiked by nighttime surges. The room murmured. I walked them through it like a professor, showing camera stills of Karen's Tesla creeping around at 2 a.m., synced with the spikes. Then I dropped the bomb, the hidden tap on our meter, with photos of its surgical wiring. "Someone's been stealing our electricity," I said, "and it's not a coincidence." Karen's smile faltered, but she leaned back, arms crossed, like she could charm her way out. I clicked to the next slide, her emails blown up for all to see. The charging station contract with its sneaky clause to bill residents for her crypto mining. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mrs. Clark muttered, "Thieving snake." I read her order for mining rigs, tying it to the stations, and laid out the math. Thousands in extra dues for every household. Neighbors shifted, some glaring at Karen. Then I went for the jugular. Her email calling my family undesirable, ranting about cleaning out Pinewood for the right kind of residents. The room went dead silent. Emma's hand tightened on mine, and I saw Maria wipe a tear. "This isn't just about money," I said. "It's about a president who abuses power to scam us and divide us." I ended with a clip from my Smart Surge Protector's log. Karen ignoring its flashing warnings, her rig sparking out in her garage. The crowd erupted in laughter, a release of pent-up rage. Mrs. Clark called out, "Serves her right." Karen shot up, her face red as a bad fuse. "This is slander," she shrieked, pointing at me. "He's paranoid, making it all up because he can't handle rules." But her voice cracked, and the room wasn't buying it. Dan stood, passing out copies of the emails, and Jamal shouted, "Explain the contract, Karen." Neighbors yelled, demanding answers. Carl tried to gavel for order, but it was like calming a hurricane. Lisa, the reporter, was scribbling furiously, her phone recording every word. Then the doors swung open, and 2 police officers stepped in, badges glinting under the fluorescence. The crowd hushed. An officer approached Karen, his voice calm but firm. "Karen Wilson, you're under arrest for theft of utilities, fraud, and discriminatory conduct." My complaint to the Public Utilities Commission had hit pay dirt, and Lisa's tip to the cops had sealed it. Karen's jaw dropped, her Tesla keys clattering to the floor. "This is a mistake," she stammered as the cuffs clicked on. The officers led her out, her yoga pants and smugness no match for the law. Neighbors clapped, some cheering, others stunned. Mrs. Clark leaned over, whispering, "That's what I call a power outage." I caught Emma's eye, and she smiled, pride shining through. The board called an emergency vote, and the crowd roared for Karen's removal and the cancellation of her charging scam. Lisa's article hit the Pinewood Post website that night, going viral by morning. I stood there, laptop still humming, feeling the weight lift. Karen thought she could break us, bury us under bills and hate. She didn't know a black engineer with a workshop and a family to fight for could turn her game into a blackout she'd never forget. A few months after Karen's handcuffed exit from the Pinewood clubhouse, life settled into a rhythm that felt like a warm Seattle afternoon, calm, with just enough breeze to keep things fresh. I was out in our backyard, sipping coffee while Emma strung fairy lights for a neighborhood barbecue we were hosting. Sophie darted around, her laughter bouncing off the cedar fence as she showed off a solar-powered toy car she'd built in my workshop. Our electric bills were back to a sane $150, and the savings account for Sophie's college fund was climbing again. Best of all, she'd gone to that science camp after a neighbor, Mrs. Clark, started a crowdfunding page that raised enough to cover it in a week. Sophie came home with a ribbon for her project on energy efficiency, inspired by the smart surge protector that had zapped Karen's crypto dreams. She'd hugged me tight, whispering, "Dad, you showed him energy's power." I'm not a crier, but that got me close. Karen? She was a ghost now. The Pinewood Post reported her plea deal: probation, hefty fines, and restitution for the stolen electricity. Her Tesla got repossessed after she defaulted on payments, last seen gathering dust in an impound lot. She'd moved out of Pinewood, her house snapped up by a young family who actually mowed their lawn without HOA threats. The rumor mill said she was living in a condo downtown, far from any homeowners associations. I didn't wish her ill, well, maybe a little, but I hoped she'd learned that scams and prejudice don't pay. Her garage, once a crypto hideout, was empty, and I couldn't help a smirk every time I passed it. Call it petty, but after months of her nonsense, I'd earned it. Pinewood itself was healing. Dan, my IT buddy, took over as HOA president, and the board rewrote the bylaws to prioritize transparency. No more mystery fines or secret clauses. They installed a few EV charging stations, but these were honest ones, with individual meters so nobody got stuck with someone else's bill. Emma spearheaded a community initiative to fight discrimination, hosting workshops with her teacher friends to talk about inclusion. Neighbors who'd shunned us during Karen's rumor spree started showing up to our barbecues, some sheepish, others genuinely warm. Maria and Jamal, our allies from the fight, became regulars at our table, their kids playing with Sophie like they'd been friends forever. Mrs. Clark, knitting needles still clicking, declared Pinewood finally worth living in and baked us a pie to celebrate. I stood by our grill that evening, flipping burgers while the fairy lights twinkled above. The backyard was packed, neighbors laughing, kids chasing fireflies, Emma pouring lemonade like the host she was born to be. My workshop door was open, the glow of my workbench spilling out, a reminder of the fight we'd won. I thought about those months of $700 bills, Karen's sneers, and the nights I'd lain awake wondering if we'd lose our home. It wasn't just about the money or even the racism, it was about protecting the life we'd built for Sophie, the one where she could dream big and know her parents had her back. I caught Emma's eye across the yard, and she raised her glass, her smile saying everything words didn't need to. Sophie ran up, tugging my sleeve. "Dad, can we show everyone my solar car?" I grinned, ruffling her hair. "Lead the way, kiddo." As the sun dipped below the pines, I leaned against the fence, coffee gone cold but my heart full. Karen had tried to dim our light, to break us with her greed and hate. She didn't know a black engineer with a voltmeter and a family to fight for could outsmart her at her own game. Pinewood wasn't perfect, but it was ours again. Neighbors, not enemies, sharing a yard instead of suspicions. I glanced at our meter, humming quietly by the garage, and chuckled. "Stay honest," I muttered, like it could hear me. Sometimes, protecting what you love means wiring up a little justice and letting the sparks fly where they may.